Bom dia, bonjour, hello. Espero que você não foi cansado com esta dia em Paris, com Poincaré. Bom, Poincaré é um rapaz que fez tanto de coisas que precisaria de um curso inteiro. Mesmo não seria suficiente. Então, hoje, today, we will continue a little with Poincaré. We will see the generalization of Poincaré theorem to Poincaré-Hopf theorem. Maybe you know already this theorem, but in fact, not only the theorem itself, but also the proof of the theorem that we will see today is very useful for characteristic classes because we will use some elements of the proof in the following courses. Okay, so this is the third course, and we will do this course. We will be with Poincaré and Hopf. Poincaré is in Paris, you know already that, and Hopf is at that time in Berlin when he did this famous theorem in 1927 for higher dimensions than the Poincaré theorem. The Poincaré-Hopf theorem has a lot of applications because it says things about points of equilibrium in dynamical systems. If you look at the Poincaré-Hopf theorem in your favorite website, you will see a lot of applications in physics, chemistry, in science, but also in social sciences, in psychology, in economy, a lot of application of this theorem. There are many proofs. And in fact, there is a proof by Milnor that we will use, but not completely, because we will use also some points given by Marie-Hélène Schwartz. And this we wrote, Tui, Nguyen, Tibish, and myself, the proof in Portuguese in this journal, CQD. So you can look at this if you wish. So first of all, what is the relation with the Gauss map? Take a k-dimensional manifold with boundary, if you wish, in Euclidean space Rk. What is important is that the manifold has the same dimensions as the space. So for example, here, this is full. This is three-dimensional, okay, in three-dimensional space. And you look at the unit outwards normal vector at each point of the boundary. Okay, so you have the tangent plane, and you take there are two normals, one going outwards, one going inwards. So you take the one going outwards and you send it to the sphere. Okay, so you have the Gauss map from the boundary of N to the sphere Sk-1. And you know that homology of the sphere is Z. You know that the boundary is K-1 manifold, okay? And so you have everything oriented. That gives you a fundamental class, as you know here, okay? Well, we have seen yesterday, last course. So, if you have a smooth vector field with isolated singularities inside, say AI, and V points outwards of N along the boundary, not necessarily the vector field we have seen, but if V points outwards, then the sum of indices equals the degree of the Gauss map, okay? So that is the proposition that we will prove. It's not difficult at all. In fact, I made this picture by hand. Sorry, it's not very beautiful, but now it is the picture I made here is in two-dimensional. Okay, so you have this vector field going outwards, V, not necessarily the normal, you need normal one. And you have V, you extend inside, okay? So you have singular points, AI. And what we do is taking small ball around each singular point, such that the ball is completely inside of N, your manifold, and that the ball does not meet, they don't meet each other, okay? And you consider the manifold N minus these balls, minus the balls. And the boundary of that is the boundary of N on one side, and also the boundary of all these balls, because we take out all these balls, okay? Now, if you look at orientation of the boundary is, for example, like that. But if you take an orientation of the boundary of N, it's clear that the boundary of the ball, N is oriented like that, okay? And the boundary of the balls is opposite orientation. If you look at inside the ball, the orientation is like that, but if you look at outside, it is opposite. So the boundary, if you take care of the orientation, the boundary of this guy is the boundary of N union minus union of the boundary of the balls, okay? This sign is minus is very important. Okay, so now take the Gauss map going from the boundary to the sphere, okay, as we have seen before. But you take the Gauss map with unit vectors. V tilde means that you take your vector field with isolated singularity AI, and you take the unit one. That is well defined on the boundary of N union of the balls, and all singularities of V tilde are inside the balls. So they are not in this manifold. You have this application, gamma V, that you can extend, which is on the boundary, but you can extend inside without any singularity, because all singularities are in the balls, without singularity. What does it mean? It means you know that if you have no singularity, it means that you can have that your vector field has no singularity, and the degree is 0. Okay, so this is your situation. I have degree 0 on the boundary of this guy. The boundary is boundary of N, union minus the union of the ball, the boundary of the balls. So the degree of this gamma on the boundary is 0, because you can extend inside N minus the balls without singularity. If the degree is 0, and you know that the degree is additive, maybe I did not say that, but it's obvious. And so the degree of this boundary here is 0. So, but this is the degree on the boundary of N minus the degree of on each of the boundary of balls. But you know that this is exactly, as we have seen, the index of V on the singular point AI. So this is the degree on AI. On the other side, your vector field is going outside. Here, it's not, V tilde is unit, but it's not necessarily going perpendicularly outside. But it's clear that you have an homotopy of these vectors, V tilde, with a normal unit vector going outwards of N. And if there is an homotopy, the degree will be the same. So the degree of your vector field going outside of the boundary or outside of N along the boundary is the same as the degree of gamma, the Gauss map that we have seen before. So this proves this proposition. The degree of the Gauss map is equal to the sum of indices. That was in the case of a manifold M with the same dimension than the Euclidean space Rk. Now take any manifold M compact inside Rk, and we will show that the degree of the Gauss map is equal, so the Gauss map that you know, okay, is equal to the sum of indices of this vector field on this manifold. In fact, I will show you this. Here is M. M is a manifold without boundary. So, of course, with the picture, there is boundary. But, and V is a vector field tangent. Is tangent. Sorry, I will. Okay, it is tangent. Okay. So V is a vector field tangent to M, and with a singularity in AI. What we will do is to take a neighborhood of M in the Euclidean space, okay, with radius epsilon. So this is a tubular neighborhood with radius epsilon along M, okay? And we are now, n epsilon is the n we have seen previously. And we will extend this vector field satisfying two conditions. First of all, we want to extend this vector field in such a way that in epsilon, it will go outwards of the boundary of n epsilon. So we will be able to apply the previous proposition because we are in n epsilon with a vector field which is going outwards the boundary. But we will extend this vector field inside n epsilon with another condition. And this one is the one that Milnor proved with only non-degenerated vector fields, but that Marie-Hélène Schwarz was able to do, even in the singular case that we will see later, but with any index of AI. In fact, we will extend the vector field on M inside the tubular neighborhood n epsilon, going outwards along the boundary, and with the same singularity, with the same index, with the same singularity, and with the same index at point AI that the index we have on along M. Okay? And there will be no more singularity. And so the same singularity than V on M, and also index will be the same. Okay? And to do that, we will use the ID which is from Milnor and Marie-Hélène Schwarz, but as I said, Marie-Hélène Schwarz, we will see it will be a little more complicated in the singular case. But what we do, we have the vector field V tangent to M with a singularity in that point A. Okay? First of all, inside n epsilon, we will extend this vector field in parallel way. So it's the tubular neighborhood as a disk here, okay? And we project the point X. Now it is R of X. R of X is a point, the nearest point in M close to X, okay? And we take the parallel, equivalent, if you wish, parallel, exactly parallel. V of Rx is a parallel of this one. Okay, you see the parallel in each point. And we take another G of X. G of X will be a vector field 0 along M. And this vector field is gradient of the distance, we will see that. And it is 0 here, and it is growing with the distance from M, okay? And it is growing exactly gradient of the distance, so it is going out like this, outwards, okay? And you take the sum of both, the sum of the parallel and the transverse, G of X, okay? And the sum is W of X, and it is not difficult to see that the degree the degree of W of X is the same as the degree of V, because the difference between V and W is just adding a vector field whose index is +1. So multiply by the index of V along M will give the degree of W, which will be the same. Okay, and that is exactly what we will do. If you understand this, you understand a lot of what we will do now. Okay, so this picture I think is very useful. So here I explain that for each point X, you take the nearest point R of X on M, okay? And we will take the parallel vector. And G is vector, this vector here. It's clear that X minus R of X is perpendicular to the tangent plane of M. Okay, or otherwise R of X will not be the closest point of X on M. And you take the gradient phi of X is the square of the distance, and you take the gradient of this distance, square of distance. So the gradient is a vector field going outside. In n epsilon, you divide by epsilon is fixed. Now epsilon is a radius of this tubular neighborhood, and so in such a way that it will be 1. It will have length 1 on the boundary, but it is 0 along M and growing till have a length 1 on the boundary. Okay, so this. You see here again another picture explaining the construction of W of X, which is exactly what I said. You take X, the nearest point, you have the vector on M. On M, your vector V has a singularity in that point. You take the parallel, you take the transverse, you take the sum, and you have a vector field W of X here, constructed in that way. Okay? So, first of all, the vector field is, the vector field vanish only at the same 0 of V, so the same singularity, and W of X is going outside the boundary. So exactly what we want. The degree is going outside with the same indices. Taking the Gauss, it's clear that taking the Gauss maps for the two vectors V in M and W in RK, in the ambient Euclidean space, you have the same indices. Exactly the picture I showed you before. Okay? Now, we will use the previous proposition that we used, and we will take in n epsilon, and the previous proposition in n epsilon said that the degree of gamma is the sum of indices in RK, in the ambient space. And now we have shown that the index of AI of the vector field V in AI on M is equal to the vector field, here it's W, sorry, in RK, so the same indices. So the sum of the indices in M is equal to the degree of gamma. It is exactly the theorem, Poincaré of theorem. Okay, so the proof is very easy. Maybe you know already, but this, as I said, you will see in here the elements that we will use in the later. Okay, so what is very important is that the theorem says that if M is compact, the sum for all singularities does not depend on V, because the degree of gamma is the degree of the normal vector field going outside of M. So it does not depend on the vector field V inside. This is very important. Poincaré, you know very well, and you know on the sphere, on the torus, and you know that the that you have this theorem saying that the Euler Poincaré characteristic equal sum of indices. And for the moment, we have shown that the sum of indices is the degree of gamma, but we have to show now that the degree of gamma is the Euler Poincaré characteristic in order to prove completely the Poincaré theorem. Well, okay, so you know that here the Euler characteristic is 2, and you have 2 singular points if you take this vector field with index 1. On the torus, you have 2 examples of isolated these vector fields without any singularity on the torus. So no problem in that case. You know that Euler Poincaré characteristic is equal to 0. Well, so the theorem will first prove in the orientable case, then in the non-orientable case. And in the orientable case, we will make in 2 steps. The first step, we will show that the sum of indices does not depend on the choice of the vector field you take, okay, on M. And the second step will consist to describe a particular vector field for which the sum of indices is equal to the Euler Poincaré characteristic. As it does not depend in the first step of the choice, it is sufficient to construct a vector field such that the sum of indices is exactly the Euler Poincaré characteristic. Okay? For the first step, in fact, we have already the first step because the theorem we have shown here says that the sum of indices is equal to the degree of gamma, but gamma is the normal go outside vector field going outside of the tubular neighborhood around M, and this does not depend of V. Okay, so we know already the sum of indices of a continuous tangent vector with isolated singularity does not depend on the choice of the vector field. Let's now go to the second step. The second step, maybe you know this already. It's very easy. In fact, we will use the Hopf vector field. It's due to Hopf. It takes triangulation of your manifold M, which is oriented, and you take a barycentric subdivision like we have seen in the previous course. The vector field will go along all the simplices of the barycentric subdivision, going from one to another when I is less than G. That means that sigma hat I is a barycenter of a simplex whose dimension is less than the dimension of the simplex whose sigma hat G is a barycenter. Okay? So you will go from less dimensional one to the more dimensional one. For example, here we will go from sigma hat 0 to sigma hat 2, also sigma 0 hat to sigma 1, 2, and also sigma 1 hat to sigma 2 hat. Okay? So each time. So we can draw this, as I said, sigma 0 hat till sigma 1 hat in that sense, from sigma 0 hat to sigma 2 hat in that sense, and also sigma 1 hat to sigma 2 hat. And you fill the triangle in a continuous vector field satisfying this. Okay? So this is not difficult. It's like garlic slices, okay, because you have to do that in every dimension, in fact also in dimension 3. And this is for a triangle, but you can do for all triangles in this two-dimensional simplex. And you can imagine in dimension 3, which is, you can imagine very well how will be your Hopf vector field, and it can be in any dimension, of course. We'll continue in dimension 2 because it's easier to picture. And you will see that here, the vector field is going outside of sigma hat 0, always, dimension 0, For dimension 2, it will be always going in. And for dimension 1, going in here and out here. And these are examples of vector fields that you know very well what are the indices. For barycenters, it's going outside the index is +1. For barycenter sigma 2 hat, it will be also going inside of the sphere as 2 inside, so it's +1. And for sigma hat 1, it is -1. Okay, so you have to take the sum of all indices to apply your theorem. But for sigma 0 hat, always +1, sigma 2 hat, always +1. And if you continue higher dimension, for even dimension, it will be always +1. And for odd dimensions, sigma 1 hat, sigma 1 3, etc., it will be always -1. So if you compute for this Hopf vector field that you have constructed, you take the sum of all indices for all singular points. All singular points are barycenter. For even dimensional simplices, barycenter simplices, barycenter barycenter of even dimensional simplices, it will be always +1, and barycenter of odd dimensional simplices, it will be always -1. So if you take the sum of the indices, you have exactly the sum of -i ki, where ki is the number of high-dimensional simplices, okay, +1 for even dimensional, -1 for odd dimensional. So this is exactly the definition of the Euler-Poincaré characteristic, and you have done with the proof of Poincaré-Hopf theorem in the case of orientable manifold. Now take the non-orientable. If you have a non-orientable manifold, you know that you can construct the oriented double covering. What does it mean? It means that if you have M, non-orientable, at each point, orientable or not, at each point, you take the two possible orientation. Okay, there are two possible orientation at each point. If your manifold is orientable, you can follow the two orientation along all your manifold, and these two, they will stay like this. Okay, so you have a double covering of M. Okay, if you prefer, you have a fiber, 2 points, and it is trivial if M is orientable because it's always a product. Okay. In the non-orientable case, what appears? And you know, I give you an example to take the projective space, for example, in the previous course. It happens that if you take from one sigma to another sigma prime, you will a twist of orientations. So this orientation, they are always 2 points, but going like this, exactly like in a Mobius bond. Okay, and the Mobius bond is non-orientable, and the boundary is exactly this. So in the case of non-orientable manifold, you have still 2 points. You have still a fiber bundle of 2 points, if you wish. Okay, but this fiber bundle is not anymore trivial. You have a double covering. You have still 2 points. You have still a double covering. But what is very important is that this double covering is oriented. Okay, so this is called the oriented double covering of M, even if M is non-orientable. And the points are the two possible orientations. Okay? And also, this is this lemma. If M is connected, then M tilde is connected if and only if M is non-orientable. Because if M is orientable, you have two points, and it's non-connected, of course. So in the case of non-orientable manifold, you use this double covering, And it's not at all difficult to see that for each point you will have 2 points, okay? But if you can lift your vector field in the double covering, and the vector field exactly the same vector field, because you have locally you have homeomorphism, okay? So your vector field you lift on each of the two pieces of the double covering, exactly the same. So on the top, the sum of indices will be the double of the indices in the bottom. And also, you can construct a triangulation from the triangulation of M, which will be, you lift the triangulation, so the Euler Poincaré characteristic will be the double as well, okay? So the Euler point characteristic of the lift is the double of Euler point characteristic of the bottom. The sum of indices is the double, and this double covering is oriented. So you can apply Poincaré theorem for the double covering, and then you divide by 2, okay? For the double covering, you have key of M tilde is equal to this sum, but here you have 2 points, okay, for two singular points, which are up to each singular points of M. So you conclude the Poincaré theorem for non-orientable. For example, I give you here the real projective line. You know that you have to identify opposite points, okay, but with the same vector field, because we will identify the points which are diametrically opposite. And okay, and so this is a very good example of vector field, and which will go inside the small ball around A. So the index is +1, and you know that the Euler Poincaré characteristic of it is +1. Okay, so some consequences. Of course, if Euler characteristic is not 0, any continuous vector field will have at least a singular point. Reciprocally, if you have a Poincaré, if you have a compact manifold such that the Poincaré of such that the Euler Poincaré, sorry, is 0, then you know that you can construct a continuous tangent vector field without singularity, like for the sphere S1, S3, any sphere with odd n will admit continuous vector field without singularity. If n is even, no, of course. Okay, so, and also you have also this corollary that we will, it's interesting, but every compact odd dimensional manifold admits a continuous tangent vector field without singularity because the Euler characteristic will be 0. That is the case of the torus. That is the case of the Klein bottle as well. So orientable or not, the corollary is true. So let's now look at and prove the Poincaré theorem with boundary. I will go a little faster. See, if you have a boundary, your vector field along the boundary we will look at 2 situations, either going outwards, either going inwards. Of course, there is a possible mixture of this, but we will look at only this. If your vector field is going outwards, it's very easy because you take the neighborhood n epsilon, and you can extend your vector field, which will be going outside. So it is exactly the same than in the case without boundary, because you have your vector field going outwards, okay? So same argument. If the vector field is pointing inwards along the boundary, what you do? First of all, you extend a little your vector field inside with the same boundary here at the level I will say 0, 1 here at the level 0, okay? And you will extend, so here you have a little cylinder, and this little cylinder you extend out of M, okay, in such a way that you have now a cylinder in 0, 2, okay, here. So for the moment you have this part. you extend your cylinder and you take any vector field V prime going outwards. Of course, between 1 and 2 here, in that region here, you have a vector field going outwards here, a vector field going outwards here. So you can extend with isolated singularities, and the sum, and you can use Poincaré-Hopf with theorem with boundary and with vector field going outwards that we have seen. Okay, so the Euler characteristic of this C here with this cylinder will be the sum of indices in these singular points. Okay, this is the theorem with boundary. But the Euler characteristic of this region here is the same than the Euler characteristic of the boundary of M, because you can take you can take an homothétie giving delta M, the boundary of M from C. Okay, so the Euler characteristic of C is the same than the Euler characteristic of M. Now, so this is exactly what I said. And now, Euler characteristic of M is the same than Euler characteristic of this M prime going to 2, okay, because you just added a cylinder whose Euler characteristic also M prime, you can name homothétie going to M, so the Euler characteristic of M and M prime is the same. But now M prime has singularities in AI and in BG as well. And if you take, so you have the sum of singularity in AI plus the sum of singularities in BG. But the sum of singularities in BG is the Euler characteristic of the boundary of M. So you have the result, which says that, here, the Euler characteristic of M minus Euler characteristic of the boundary is the sum of indices if your vector field is pointing inwards. So thank you for your attention, and ficken ben.